Hello, my name is Richard Fuentes. I will be giving a presentation on alternative forms of therapy. More specifically, I will be presenting various aspects of two chemicals, 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine and N-dimethyltryptamine. Let's begin. The dozen or so Apollo astronauts who have escaped its orbit and traveled to the moon had the privilege of seeing the planet from a perspective never before available to our species, and several of them reported that the experience changed them in profound ways. This is a quote from the author of How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. In this book, Pollan dives deeply into understanding the science of psychedelics in relation to consciousness, dying, addiction, depression, and transcendence, all of which are relevant to our understanding of the chemicals being discussed today. To start, here is a timeline of some notable events to help put this research into perspective. So long before records were kept, indigenous tribes have used entheogenic preparations containing DMT for ceremonial and ritual healing practices. And in 1931, N-dimethyltryptamine was synthesized for the first time, while around 1935 through 1936, the structure of 5-MeO-DMT was discovered and later synthesized for the first time. Scientists made a groundbreaking discovery in 1953 when they discovered serotonin and its importance. The first experience with synthesized DMT was done intramuscularly by a Hungarian chemist and psychiatrist named Stefan Zara. In 1970, the Controlled Substance Act was passed limiting the research of these chemicals, and in 1994, Rick Strassman conducts the first DMT study on humans. And from then on, we have been in the psychedelic renaissance, where we stand out at the frontier of change in the medicine and society. So to give an overview, there are three main classes of psychedelics: the tryptamines, phenethylamines, and ergolines, which may also include lysergamides. To start off, tryptamines are structures formed from the base molecule tryptamine, which is used throughout nature for various functions. Some notable tryptamines are melatonin, serotonin, ibogaine, DMT, psilocin, and psilocybin, and debatably LSD. The second of the main classes are phenethylamines. These are formed from the base molecule phenethylamine, which occurs in our own body, throughout nature, even in chocolate. Known as the love drug for its effects on mood, they can also aid in weight loss and athletic performance. Some well-known drugs of this class are mescaline, 2CB, MDMA, and methamphetamine. And lastly, we have lysergamides, which are produced from ergoline alkaloids, which are derived from a group of fungi called Claviceps ergo. This class is unique since it's polycyclic, encompassing both tryptamine and phenethylamine structures, mimicking both serotonin and dopamine neurotransmitters. These would include LSA, LSD, and many other research chemicals. So what is N-dimethyltryptamine? Well, commonly referred to as the spirit molecule, N-DMT is a naturally occurring alkaloid known for its powerful yet brief psychoactive effects. Ranging from 5 minutes to an hour, they can be smoked, insufflated, injected, or brewed, if coupled with the right MAOIs, though this active reaction drastically prolongs its effects. These are some of the flora which contain notable amounts of N-DMT. The Psychotria viridis on the left, Mimosa hostilis in the middle, and the Phalaris aquatica. Slightly different than N-DMT, we have 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine, which is commonly referred to as the God molecule. 5-MeO-DMT is an altered analog of DMT. It should be distinguished for its higher potency and different subjective experience. Both of these substances are usually synthesized into salt or crystalline form in order to vaporize, as it yields the most rapid onset effects. On the left here we have the Viola sebifera, a plant known to have high amounts of 5-MeO-DMT. And on the right, we have the famous toad, Bufo alvarius, which secretes 5-MeO-DMT as a sort of defensive mechanism some biologists have speculated. Now, moving on to their significance. How do classical psychedelics work? The principal theory for their function is by stimulating primarily 5-HT2A receptors. Within the serotonergic pathway, this pathway is responsible for mood, memory, processing, sleep, as well as cognition. And the stimulation can lead to activating various areas of the brain, which could lead to a synesthesia and other profound effects. This is an excerpt from an article studying the importance of serotonin in the psychedelic experience. The predominant psychological function of physiological serotonergic pathways in the brain serve to relax prior assumptions or beliefs held at multiple levels of the brain's functional hierarchy, perceptually, emotionally, cognitively, and philosophically, in terms of biases. In so doing, it opens a door to a heightened sensitivity to context, an ideal precondition for effective change. So to revisit and add to that, serotonin runs through dopamine's path in the frontal cortex, which has a role in habit formation and decision making. By disrupting the default mode network or the previously reinforced patterns of habit, we can prime the conditions needed for what is essentially rewiring of the brain circuits. And integration is an added aspect to yield long lasting results without dependency on medicine like other current treatments. Understanding their potential. Moving on to the first case study from a journal, Progress in Neuropsychopharmacology, Pharmacology and Biological Psychiatry, we look at classic hallucinogens for treatment of addiction. To start off, they have several features desirable for an anti-addiction drug. Not only do they show low potential for addiction, but they may also bring out persisting changes in behavior and personality. While most other treatments depend on medications to bring about normalcy. They have molecular targets consistent with anti-addiction effects. These alternative forms of therapy induce self-reflection and sometimes mystical, spiritual, or otherwise abnormal human experiences which are most likely to be remembered. This aligns with the naturalistic lens of recovery, which often seeks to understand our diagnosis with wider lenses of how to recover. With all that being said, extensive clinical research has shown classic hallucinogens to be safe when appropriate precautions and preparation is taken. In the second case study, we analyze ayahuasca's entwined efficacy, an ethnographic study of ritual healing from addiction. Now, this study is more qualitative, so I urge the audience to read the study as if it piques their interest. In this analysis of addiction recovery experiences with ayahuasca, through long-term observations and interviews within the ayahuasca community, strong evidence suggests successful outcomes throughout their history of use, again, when in the proper set and setting. The medicine in use, ayahuasca, is said to synergize different aspects of therapy, such as connecting psychological and physiological aspects, by supplementing a layer of spirituality to implement a holistic form of healing that makes us rethink the current models of therapy. In conclusion, researchers implore that results from the observations invite us to collectively move beyond a discussion about whether or not psychedelic assisted interventions are effective in the treatment of addiction, and to ask instead, for whom and under what conditions can they be? The final case study we'll be going over was released in 2019, titled 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine used in a naturalistic group setting associated with unintended improvements in depression and anxiety. This epidemiological study took data extrapolated from various user experiences via online questionnaires and shows us a high percentage of improvement in depression and anxiety. Looking at the results, out of 362 participants, 149 with depression and 173 with anxiety, 80% of the depressed population felt improvement in their condition, while 29% experienced no change and 19% felt worse. In the anxious population, 79% felt improvement in their conditions, 37% had no change, and 21% felt worse. It should be noted that within the demographics, there is a correlation between age and improvement. The younger the participant was, the more they seemed to improve. Furthermore, those who scored higher on the mystical experience questionnaire had shown greater improvements. Some of the effects and possible risks are as listed, and it should be stipulated that patient health history consideration is integral to ensuring harm reduction, such as sensitive heart conditions or a predisposition for seizures. Some potential risks are psychosis, which is an episodic, sometimes recurring, fragmented sense of self and basal anxious uncertainty, sometimes accompanied by a delusional belief system. Another is hallucinogen persisting perceptual disorder, which is when an aspect of the experience persists well beyond the usual duration. This could range from visual tracers to full-on distortions of perception. Although uncommon, certain measures can prevent this from occurring, such as keeping the dosage within a reasonable range and being in an ideal environment as well as mindset. For the most part, personal experiences with DMT stay within the confines of one's body and mind, the realms of feeling and thinking. As such, the phenomenon we encounter are not very different from the sorts of things any psychotherapist hears in his office. Body-based feeling and mind-based thoughts. This is a quote from Dr. Strassman's book, where he goes into detail about various aspects of the research he conducted in New Mexico and beyond. Now, to end my presentation, I leave you with a call to question. The boom of discovery and research in the 50s and 60s came to a halt by the international law called the Controlled Substance Act of 1970, which made both 5-MeO and N-dimethyltryptamine Schedule 1 substances, which are said to have no medical benefit and high potential for addiction and danger, as well as hefty repercussions for anyone using or distributing these substances. These irrational actions left scientists confused as they continued to discover many important potential applications for both 5-MeO and N-dimethyltryptamine. We are at the frontier of this promising new age in research. Legislation for reform is at our fingertips. Now more than ever, we must break away from the shackles of oppression our government confines us to and step into the future of healing and growth as an individual, together as humanity. Thank you for listening. You are greatly appreciated. Here are my references. And here's extra information if you would like to pause and read. Thank you.